All right, hey guys, how you going? My name's Troy. Probably been debating about whether or not to do this video for quite a while, and suddenly, on the way to a gig, I felt the urge to just. I was at, arrived at my gig early and felt the urge and was compelled to kind of do the video now. So I'm going to try and get this video in pretty much one take, and if I muck up here and there, please stick with me. So essentially, look, this video. Um, is about how I was a full blown atheist and how I've come to faith and to Jesus and faith in Jesus Christ. It's basically my testimony. So yeah, look, I'm going to start from the start. I'm going to try and condense this. It's probably a long-winded story, so I'm going to try and condense it as best I can. So when I was young, look, when I was probably about, well, first of all, I'm Australian. I grew up with parents that probably really weren't religious. They were Protestant, I guess. And that was only because their parents were probably Protestant, and that was kind of just passed down, so they weren't really church-going people. However, when I was I was baptized, but, that was probably just a thing that it was more so a ritual more than anything really. So I first heard about God and Jesus when I was probably in primary school. I would have been about grade 2 or 3. So I used to go to this kind of scouts thing with my brother and one of our friends, and it was kind of run by the Salvation Army, which is like a Christian charity, so to speak. So we'd go on a Thursday night from memory, and we'd go there with all these other boys, and we'd have, essentially it was scouts. We wore berets and I don't know, I had toggles and the scarves and all the works and whatnot. And we do adventure stuff and stuff like that. But then during the night, we'd sit down, and then the leader of the scouts for the night, we'd sit and talk, and they'd obviously talk about Jesus and God, and they'd tell maybe a story from the Bible or something like that. So, I used to say prayers. We'd say prayers. We'd say the Lord's Prayer when I was probably, primary school and whatnot. And so I did. And I'll always remember that the leader told me, which stuck with me for a long, long time, that the more you pray, the more that God will hear you. And I remember, if you can imagine a pipe, I'm praying at the end of one pipe and God's at the end. And he said, imagine that pipe's all sort of filled with muck. The more you pray, the more it cleans out, and the more that God will hear your prayers. And so that kind of stuck with me. So that kind of really kept me praying when I was younger. And then I guess fast forward to probably, I don't know, maybe early teens, started high school. I can't really remember, but I probably stopped going to that. And then obviously, teenager, other things that start coming into play. You start getting curious about alcohol or girls and all those sort of things. And so I don't know, I guess I started maybe waning in my sort of belief. However, I always thought that there was some sort of God or like creator or sort of like intelligence behind everything. And then I guess fast forward to probably I would say mid 20s, and so forth, and probably up to maybe late 30s, I ended up being a flat out atheist. So once again, I always kind of felt like there was some sort of like intelligence or some higher thing, running the show, so to speak, or having the pulling the strings, so to speak. But I thought the Bible was an absolute crock. And I was repulsed by that and religion so much because I was so anti-religion, because I would see around the world of what religions were fighting in wars, and because of different people's belief systems and whatnot. I was so anti it. I literally couldn't even, like, the word Jesus, I couldn't even get out of my mouth. Like, I was so repulsed by that word. It was crazy. And so, I would, I'd have some friends that were similar to me, and, I was always be looking up and watching kind of Richard Dawkins, stuff on YouTube, and sending my mates that, look at these guys, these crazy guys believe in God and Jesus and that. Look at Dawkins ripping them. Christopher Hitchens, anyone who was hardcore atheist and against God, like I was kind of, right in there. And then I kind of had, like, when I was, I don't know, maybe I can't even remember. It would have been like early 30s. So I'm a musician. Long story short, I've always been, when I started being a musician, when I started learning guitar, about 15 or so, always knew that was what I wanted to do. And I always wanted to be like the level of like Bon Jovi. Anyway, so 32, I basically came to the realization that just wasn't going to happen. And I basically had a breakdown, over it. I got severe depression. And then that kind of led me going into, I got heavily into like Eastern philosophy, so I went down the road of meditation, New Age stuff. Never really got into the Reiki or the crystals and anything like that, but I was fully into yoga and meditation. And to be fair, I found meditation quite useful. I wasn't necessarily praying to a Krishna or anyone like that. I just basically was doing it to kind of clear my mind. And I must say, I did find really a lot of benefits from that. It kind of really changed my trajectory. I had severe depression. I was like in a really bad way. And I would say, honestly, the yoga, I did it for maybe about 3/4 of a year. And physically, my body was probably the stretchiest that it ever was. I've always been terrible at touching my toes, but I could put both my palms when I lean over on the floor. Like, it was crazy. So in that sense, I would say it was beneficial. I guess, since being a Christian now, there's a lot of people that say, yoga's bad, or it's, you're worshipping Indian gods and stuff. To be honest, I don't know. I don't know. It was I got to honestly say it was beneficial for me at the time. I don't do it anymore. And that was because we had kids and, that got in the way of going to practice and whatnot. But I do, there's stuff like that I still wrestle with, especially with meditation, because I do think that there are a lot of benefits with that. So anyway, went down the path of New Age, and then it wasn't probably until I think my first son was born and my wife was pregnant. And I remember that during the pregnancy, she'd have all these kind of symptoms, like she'd get tired, or this would happen with her body and this and that. And you'd read up on it, and it was wild. Like, for example, from memory, there was one where it's like, well, a woman's body gets tired when she's pregnant, and that's because it's actually the body telling her that if she does any more, it's going to be harmful for the baby. So it actually makes her, whatever she's doing or whatever it may be, it makes her tired to know that that's a warning sign of like, stop, otherwise any more than that's going to be harmful. And so there's all these other things that kind of happen that I was reading about in the pregnancy that, this would cause this, which meant this would cause that. And it really started to make me think, I don't know, like this whole random evolution thing, like, I mean, I had to, at the time I agreed with evolution, but I was like, I don't know, there's got to be some sort of blueprint to this life, like that can't just randomly happen, that surely there must be someone who designed this, right? And then, so anyway, so that I think planted some seeds, to be honest. And then I went, I think it was during COVID. And one time I was in Melbourne, so we were locked down, and I must have turned the TV on probably a Sunday morning. And we used to have like, early mornings, they'd have like, religious shows or something like that. They used to have Benny Hinn back in the 90s. Never got on board with that. But anyway, there was this show, Hour of Power. And I just happened to watch it. It was Bobby Schuller from Hour of Power, who I watch now, who's incredible. And he was doing some sermon. And I remember watching it, and usually I just flick off. But for whatever reason, I kept on watching it. And I don't know, for whatever reason, I didn't find him over religious. He wasn't really pushy about like, Christianity. It was just what he was saying. And it really resonated with me for whatever it was he was saying. And I ended up hitting him on Instagram saying, hey, look, man, I'm not religious, but, I'm right into the Eastern philosophy and that, but that was a pretty good sermon. That was, kudos, blah, blah, blah. And he wrote back saying, hey, thanks. That's awesome. So fast forward, anyway, that happened. And then COVID, we went through COVID in 2020, and then we moved to Tasmania, started 21. And so anyway, got to Tasmania and, was driving around, getting used to the place, and had the radio on, getting used to, and there's only like 5 stations down in Hobart. There's not many. And, anyway, I was hearing all these pop songs, right? And I'd never heard them before on commercial radio in Melbourne. I'm like, this is weird. All these like crazy produced, awesome songs are on there. I was like, this is pretty cool. And then maybe one day I'm like, hang on, did I hear the word Jesus in one of these songs? That's a bit weird. And then I'm like, I put two and two together. I'm like, oh, it's probably a Christian, Christian station. But I really like the songs and the message and the production. Being a musician, I just love the production, and the messages were like really upbeat. And I'm like, you know what? I think I can. I think I can listen to this, and I'll just, if I have to hear the word Jesus here and there, so be it. But I like the music. And then I don't know. I would say maybe a year and a half or 2 years on, after listening, something inside of me just started like really like, I wonder what it'd be like to be Christian, like to have, to be Jesus, have Jesus in my life and to be, back with God. Um, and then I started to get the feelings. I'm going to turn that light back on. There we go. And then I had this real urge in my heart to to want to get baptized, which was really random. But I'm like an urge, like strong, like, dude, like this feeling just was like, dude, you got to be baptized. And I was like, this is crazy. Let's just, and I was listening to this music. And then this went on for maybe a month and a half. And then I kind of like, oh, I don't know. I was like, this is weird. And then I kind of just pushed it away. I kind of suppressed it. So that might have been a couple of months. And then it came back again. And, this feeling came back like, dude, you have to be baptized. This is what you need to do. And obviously I had this feeling, but I still had a lot of questions about, I was still really on the fence about, I was more open to it, but I was still, there's a lot of questions and a lot of stuff which I didn't agree with the Bible. So anyway, I found a church one day. I was just driving. I had my kid in the car while I dropped my wife off. She was shopping, and I just randomly, he was asleep in the car, and I just had to keep driving while I kept him asleep. And I drove past this church, and something inside me like, that's the church you need to go and speak to the pastor. And so anyway, rang up, spoke to Matt Garvin from Citywide Church, and went in for like 2 sessions to have a sit down with him and basically, fry him with all my questions and, rebuttals about what I thought. And at the end of it, at the second meeting, I don't know. I was just like, you know what? I think I'm just going to do it. I'm going to take the plunge. And so I said, dude, book me in for a baptism. I'm ready to do it. And he's like, awesome. So I don't know, a couple of weeks went by and I got baptized, born again. But so from there, if I'm being honest, I got baptized, right? But in all honesty, I don't think I was fully across the line, like I was a Christian, but I wasn't fully on board. And I sort of played the part for a while, and then I don't know how long it would have been. It might have been 6 months or something. And then I kind of just started to go back into, well, is it really true? I don't know about some of this stuff again, blah, blah, blah. And then I kind of was, maybe not second guessing that I should got baptized, but I was really like, I don't know. To be honest, I didn't really give my whole life to Jesus. If I'm honest, I said the words, but I probably was still apprehensive about doing it because I kind of didn't want to. I've always been like a bit of a control freak. Anyway, so that went on for a bit, and then I'd watched some people talk about how they just gave, they had dramas and they just gave it to God, they gave it to Jesus, and like that was the best thing. And anyway, so. I was watching that again because at the time I was going through some issues, I think some financial issues and some other things. And I was like, you know what? I really don't know how I'm going to get out of this. I don't know. I have no way out of this. I do not know. And so one night before bed, I sat down. I'm like, Jesus, God, I'm all yours, man. I don't know how to get out of this. I said, I need your help. If you can help me with this, I would really love your help. But dude, I'm done. I'm done trying to manage everything myself. I'm trying to live, sick of just like doing things for myself and just like trying to live for myself and And so I was like, I just gave it up, man. But I genuinely had the feeling of like, dude, I'm done. It's all for you, man. It's all for you. And I must say, there was some sort of feeling that come over me. There was this calmness, and I really felt like some sort of connection. I don't know. Not massive, but enough to recognize there was something there, And then from that day, I've just been more of a believer, and especially a lot of the stuff of the Bible, you know, I choose to believe. I know there's a lot of people and probably a lot of friends that may watch this and go, dude, Troy, what? This is whack. You know, you're crazy. But to be honest, like I choose now to believe in Jesus Christ. I choose to believe in God. I choose to believe the Bible. And I read the Bible. And don't get me wrong, there's still stuff that I watch a lot of sermons and that, trying to understand it all. I don't think anyone's going to probably fully, understand it exactly probably how it's been written. But, you can only do the best you can. But from there, it's been honestly like just amazing. And now, it's taught me to sort of like always have a mentality of trying to give, like still you can still want stuff and have things on that, but to always be in a mind of service and whatever I'm doing, whether it's my kids, my family, my wife. I'm not perfect at it by any means, but I'm trying to be like that way. And it's been amazing. I probably skipped over a bit, because I'm doing this video. I forgot while I'm doing it, but it has been amazing. And I guess I would say that, like, given the craziness of the world at the moment in which we're in, there's definitely been a calmness about myself, knowing that, like, the world can just go absolutely batshit crazy if it wants, but I know I'm going to heaven, and I definitely, hope my kids and my wife go to heaven as well, because that really gives me a sense of like, we're only flesh here. I've always believed, even when I was into the New Age stuff, I wasn't fully across reincarnation, but I definitely think your spirit or your soul goes somewhere. But, it gives me peace knowing that now that I'm going to go to heaven and be with Jesus after I pass away. So, the dudes in the world, if they want to fight, they want to cause wars and end this destruction of the world, it's going to be absolutely terrible if that's the way that this world is going to end up going. But I don't know, it gives me peace knowing that that's where I'm going to be headed afterwards. So, yeah, look, I'm trying to think of other things that may have come to mind, but essentially, I guess I'll wrap it up there. But I guess, look, hopefully, if you're on the fence about it, hopefully this video has maybe helped you understand, or seen a perspective. Maybe you're thinking about it. Maybe you weren't unsure. Maybe you've been like me. And essentially, I'm just putting this video out because I felt really compelled to, but I really hope that maybe someone, I don't know how many people are going to see this. The channel that I'm going to put this on really, I don't use it at all really. So I just want to put it up there. But so hopefully this video can help someone if they're in the same situation I was. And yeah, it's, look, I'm not out there trying to force people to do this. It's my own personal thing, and it's definitely growing. I definitely want to grow my faith more and more, and I definitely probably want to start, putting that into my songs, because I feel a massive, massive part of my soul and my heart wants to sing for God and Jesus now, and uplift people with my the gifts that I've been given. So anyway, I really hope this video has helped someone out there, and yeah. Catch you soon. Cheers.